Okay, morning everybody. I'm going to go through what is referred to as perfect competition. The graph for perfect. Actually, first of all, the idea of all of these different types of markets. So in this course, we're not really concerned with all of the, well, for some people this will be a relief and other people will be disappointed, but the math part of it is a minor part of the course. So the amount of math you're doing in this unit is basically the most math you're going to do at all. In terms of, if you do economics in the future, you're going to do a lot more math. Okay, if you do microeconomics, that is, and if you do economics, you have to do micro along with macro. But basically, this course is mostly to do with theory, and not as much to do with the math part. So just so you're aware, again, some people will be disappointed and some people will be delighted. But that's just the way that's the way it is. Because again, in high school, people are just trying to understand what's going on in terms of interpreting the graphs you see, as opposed to having to draw them all the time. So anyway, that's just the difference between the two. Not the difference between the two, but that's the way that that high school economics is going to differ if you're going to take it in university. All right, so just to go along with some of the things I'm just thinking here. So I'm just drawing the graphs as I was talking. But basically, we know this is this graph here, this one here, is an example of just any kind of market. And in this case, this is the apples market. Okay, so an apples market is a perfect competition because everybody sells apples, right? And yes, I know there's different varieties of apples, and some people love this kind of apple, some people love that kind of apple, blah, blah, blah. This is a simple example. So all apples in this market are more or less the same. One producer could not tell whose apple it is that they're eating. That is the nature of perfect competition. There are other things like that, other fruits, other products that don't differ that much, like milk is another one. All of them are examples of perfect competition because you have many buyers and sellers in there. They all know the price in that. They sell the same, sell identical goods, and the sellers are price takers. Price takers. All right, and also the idea of entering and exiting the market is we'll just call it simple. So it's relatively simple in terms of there's few restrictions. This would be another one. Another example here is fish, right? So if you have a can of tuna, it's not necessarily from one fisherman or the other, right? You can't really tell that. That's just another example of perfect competition. So to go back to the idea of the graphs here. So this is your market here, right? So we've already seen how, if this is demand for apples and this is a supply of apples, right? We get an equilibrium here, and we're just going to say the equilibrium is this quantity and it's $10. Now this is the graph for an individual firm at perfect competition. And in terms of this, the demand for their specific apple, so that particular farmer's apple, is actually, the demand is horizontal. And that's because they can't change anything to do with the price of the apple, because they are indistinguishable from their competition. There's no changing. So if they go higher, right, nobody's going to buy apples from them. They'll buy somebody else. If they go lower, well, there's no reason to go any lower, because if they do that, they're just losing out on potential profit, right? So that's why it is a horizontal line. So this line is looking at, so you've got, these things are, that's marginal revenue. Wow, marginal revenue equals demand. And you've got the idea that, as I said, there's no movement along here in terms of price. So in this case, it doesn't benefit the firm to produce more or produce less than this particular, along this particular price point. This is average revenue. Average revenue. Okay, so when the marginal revenue equals demand equals the average revenue equals price, that is the price point, or the this price point that a company wants to stop selling. Because if the marginal revenue increases over their profit, right, then they're not going to make money. They're going to end up losing money, which is of course not what they want to do. And just to kind of further illustrate that idea, okay, if we have another one, so we have the same, we've got the same line here, so that's our demand curve in this particular example. And then we have this line, we're going to call this one the marginal cost. And then we have this line here, which we're going to call the, I'm not going to call, but is the, oh, I just totally lost my train of thought. What is that? Average total cost. Thank you. Average total cost. All right. So the average total cost. So you want, as a producer, you're going to want to stop right here, right? So if you stop here, that means that you have, if you don't stop there, I should say, you are going to produce too much, and you're going to, every additional unit you're going to produce at a loss, right? Because as you go up in production, you're going to move along this marginal cost line, and it's going to go beyond what you're going to get for each additional unit, and so you're going to end up losing money. So you're not going to do that. All right, that's not going to be prudent for you. You're going to stay below that line. All right. So this represents down here all of the money. So that is the revenue all along here. I don't want to color it in because, well, it'd be complicated for me to do it properly on this thing, and at the same time, it's not all profit. Okay, so at the same point, right where, I should have drawn that a little bit better, right where the average total cost meets the amount that they are going to produce, so right there, okay, so that represents your costs. And this up here, so this part up here, that's the actual profit. And this is your your revenue minus your costs. Okay, that's where it equals 0. You haven't made any money until you cross that threshold, and then everything up above that is profit. So like I said, this is the way it works in terms of graphs. We're not going to do like drawing these graphs and stuff. We just want to understand what's going on. So what we want to actually understand out of this is the idea of perfect competition, and how, you know, people can enter markets, firms can enter and exit the market relatively easy. There's lots of firms, they are price takers, so if they produce over a certain amount, or they change their price, they're immediately going to either lose more money or they're not going to sell as much because someone will go to someone else. So that's the concern. That's the idea we want to remember about monopolist. Perfect competition. Sorry, I haven't got to monopolies yet. That's what we want to know about that. And then in terms of looking at the graph, being able to analyze and see that your perfect competition has that horizontal line, and then wherever the horizontal line equals marginal costs, you're going to produce no farther than that because you're going to lose money beyond that. And then if you look at the average total cost below there, then you can figure out, again, if we were going to figure out graphically, you can figure out where the profit begins and how much revenue is taken up by costs. Okay, so hopefully that's fairly clear. I'm going to keep going on with small videos about each piece before I get into anything else. So next one will be probably monopolistic competition.